Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing fine. Welcome back to the Wee Larder channel. Today we're going to be making a delicious gooseberry meringue pie. Now this recipe is so good. If you have gooseberries in your garden, you definitely have to try it. It's really delicious. So it's a sweet pastry, a gooseberry curd and whipped meringue, and it is so light but so delicious. It's a really nice recipe to have at the end of summer. If you don't have gooseberries, you could probably try this with blueberries, or maybe blackberries would work well, or even raspberries. Or you could just use any type of curd in the middle instead of the gooseberry curd. So let's get started on our delicious gooseberry curd meringue pie. So you'll need the following ingredients for this delicious recipe. So you might want to pause the video here just to take a note. I have actually lost my voice a little bit, so I do apologise. My voice sounds a little bit funny, but I will try my best to be as clear as possible. So we're going to start by preheating our oven to 170. And we're then going to grease our tin really well with butter. So I just use either like a butter wrapper to do this, or I just pick up a piece of butter and grease it down. So you just want to make sure that there's enough on there so that the pastry doesn't stick. So we're then going to add all of our flour into our bowl, and we're going to sift that through. And we're also going to add in our pinch of salt as well. And we're going to add in our butter, and we're just going to blend that through with our fingers so that we get a breadcrumb type consistency. So I'm just going to speed this up here, but it does take a couple of minutes or so. So you're looking for a crummy type mixture, and then we're going to add in our icing sugar. We're just going to sift that through. And we're just going to stir that in. So we're just going to mix the ice and sugar through so that it is completely mixed through, and we should have a really good consistency that looks something like this. So it should look like little crumbs when you run it through your fingers. And we're now going to add our egg yolk and a little bit of water. So I don't have a specific quantity of water. It's different for all flours the different flours that you're using. I have probably added about 3 to 4 tablespoons, so maybe make a start with that, and if that's not enough, add a little bit more water. You can maybe even try starting with a couple of tablespoons of water. So you're just kind of using enough water to form a dough, so you really don't need a lot at all, and you don't want it to be sticky in any way. So just add a very small amount at a time and just mix it through like this until it starts to combine in the middle. And you should have something that looks like this. And then we are going to pop that in the fridge to chill for about 20 minutes. So once your dough is nice and chilled, we're going to flour our chopping board, and we're then going to roll out our pastry. So we're just going to roll our pastry out here to make sure your rolling pin is really covered in flour as well, so nothing sticks. We need plenty of flour, and we're just going to start rolling. So we're just looking for a big enough surface area to cover the tart tin that I'm using, or the tart tin that you're using. So you just need it big enough to cover your specific size. So looking for something like this. Now I'm pretty rustic when it comes to pastry making. I am no pastry chef. I've said this before, but I do love making my own pastry. It's just so much better than buying it. But if I'm in a hurry, and if you don't want to make your own pastry for this recipe, please feel free just to buy some short crust from the supermarket. That will work just as well in this recipe. It does taste a lot better when it is freshly made yourself, but if you want to make this recipe and you're no good at making pastry, or you don't have time, just buy the shop bought. So we're popping it into our tin there, and then we are popping the grease-proof paper on the top. And we're then going to fill that with our baking beans. So I'm just using some old black beans. I've been using these forever, and they just work really well. You could use like old chickpeas or something. Just make sure you label your jar so you don't actually use them for cooking again. While that's baking in the oven for 20 minutes, we're going to add all of our gooseberries into a small pan. So we've just taken the tart out of the oven here as well after our 20 minutes. And we're just emptying all of our beans back into the jar. So just leave those to cool and just pop them back in the cupboard for next time. And they are just so handy for baking
with pastry. So we're just going to gently trim the edges of our pastry here. You can do this before you put it in the oven, but I find that it shrinks a little bit, so I like to do it afterwards. So to make our gooseberry curd, we are now going to stir the gooseberries around in our pan. And we're just going to simmer our gooseberries for 15 minutes until they have completely softened. And then we're going to mash them, so you can use a potato masher or a fork to mash them. And we're then going to put them through the sieve. So we're going to mash them through the sieve so that we can get the puree at the end coming out into the pan again. So we're going to use that puree to make our gooseberry curd. So this does take quite a few minutes to do. So take your time. I've just speeded up the video here just to show you how it's done. So we're just mixing that through, mashing it through like so. So you should have all of your gooseberry puree in your pan like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to thicken our gooseberry puree. So we're going to thicken it on a medium heat for about 5 minutes. And we're looking for like a jammy kind of consistency. So it's quite thick that we're looking for. And then we're going to, once it's nice and thick, we're then going to add in our butter and our sugar. So if you pop all your sugar and your butter in there, and we're just going to melt that down until it is completely combined. So you want to keep stirring this because you do not want this to stick to the bottom of the pan, all that effort going to waste. So you want to keep stirring it in the pan until the butter has completely melted and the sugar has dissolved. So what we're going to do is turn the heat down a little bit. We don't want a boiling hot mixture for our egg yolks. So we want to bring the heat down, and we're now going to slowly add our egg yolks in. Just make sure that you're whisking all the time, and you don't want to bring the heat up to a boil again. You want to keep the heat low to medium, and what we're going to do is just keep stirring that through until this thickens. So do not stop whisking. Just keep stirring and stirring, and you should have something that sticks to the back of a spoon. So I'm doing a couple of tests here. You can see I've speeded up the video, so it does take about 5 minutes to thicken or so, and you should have something that's sticking to the back of a spoon kind of consistency. So what we're going to do is pour all of that into a jug, and we're going to leave that to cool completely. So you want to pop that in the fridge to cool down completely before we add it into our pastry. Or if your kitchen's nice and cold, you can just leave it to the side and just make sure you cover it with cling film as well. So once it's completely cooled, it should be nice and thick, and we're just going to pop that into our tart case. So just make sure you get all of that in there. And we're going to add our 3 egg whites into our mixing bowl now, and we're going to make our meringue topping. So we're going to whisk that up. Now you're going to whisk and whisk and whisk for a couple of minutes, and then you should have nice, light, fluffy white meringues, and they should stick to the whisker when you lift up the KitchenAid as well. So you know when they're ready, when they're sticking to the whisk, and they also can stand up on their own as well. So you can see it's starting to change now. It's gone completely white, and it should be nice and stiff. So what we're going to do is add in our sugar very, very slowly. Now I have actually speeded up this part of the video, but I'm just adding in a tiny bit at a time. I'm keeping the whisk on quite a low speed, and I am just adding in a little bit at a time until it's all completely added in. So you don't want to go throwing the whole lot in at once. You just want to put a little bit in at a time and just keep it going. Then we're going to fill our piping bag with our nice meringues. So you can use a fancy piping nozzle if you want to. I just have a real simple one here, and I'm basically just piping all the way around the meringue. like so. And it should be nice and thick as well and holding its shape really well. So make sure that it is that consistency before you put it into the piping bag. So we're reducing our oven heat to 160 and we're going to bake that in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes, or basically just until the meringues are nice and golden on the top. You don't want to overcook your meringues because they do go really crispy and horrible. So you want them just nice and golden on the top, and they are ready. So really, ideally, you want to leave this to cool completely before serving it. I find that is the best way to serve it. I couldn't wait, obviously being me, so I had to slice right into it. And the curd was a little bit runny just out the oven, but it will thicken up if you put it in the fridge. So I would cool it down completely before serving it. And that is our delicious gooseberry meringue pie. So you can actually sprinkle some lime on there as well. That looks really nice. And you don't need to serve this up with anything special at all. It just works really well on its own. So I hope you enjoyed this gooseberry recipe. I'm sure you'll agree it is super delicious. And if you took a photo, please feel free to tag me on Instagram and I'll share it on my stories. And if you're after a copy of my free cookbook, you can pop over to my website and pick one up there. It's angiemilne.com, and I'm also working on my new cookbook as well, which is my family seasonal cookbook, and it also has tips and things for meal planning. So it's a really, really good one coming out, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a big thumbs up, and if you click that subscribe button and the little bell next to it, I will see you guys again soon. So take care, lots of love, bye bye.